and I was totally excited to see this movie. I've been back and forth on Amazon purchasing this flick. I wanted to see Flow, 2024 Oscar nominee, but it's a movie with a black cat. The poster, the thumbnail I used for this episode is somewhat of a cat floating in like a swirl. I didn't know what to expect when I sat down. It didn't take me long to see that this movie there's just no dialogue. There's no thoughts. The animals aren't speaking to one another, but this is an animal journey, and everyone's trying to avoid this flood. And we kind of have, everyone coming together. There's obstacles. They're fighting each other, but they're friends because they're working through this flood, and everything that they know is just disappearing. And we get some really cool things in this movie, but we have this creative decision of no dialogue. We got some problems with that, so let's
Quiet
go.
on the set.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take 1.
Action!
It's hard to define why something works, why something doesn't, why you're disconnected from it. I think there's this creative. Everything goes back to this G.I. Joe comic book. It's called the Silent Issue. Might have been issue 34. They didn't have time to letter it, so the G.I. Joe team just put together a silent issue, which is like two ninjas, right? Like two silent ninjas going at it. It's a perfect scenario for a silent comic book. And the generation goes by, and the next generation brings it back. A G.I. Joe silent issue has become a G.I. Joe trope. Like they do every few years. It's not very special now. I believe Marvel Comics at one time did what was called Nuff Said, and it was like a month-long event where all the comics were silent. And we think it's a storytelling choice. We feel, and we want to say, master storytellers can tell a story with limited means, meaning we're not going to have dialogue. We're not going to have people talking. We're not going to have captions or any type of narration. And we're going to strip down the storytelling to its essence. We're going to strip it down to silence. But then we go through film history, right? I don't know. Once those talkies, once sound, once IMAX, once CinemaScope, once the visual and the combination of the senses and the elements culminated in a cinematic experience, nobody went to silent pictures. Isn't that funny how we say this is a masterful storytelling move, but the reality is we do not go back and we resurrect silent movies. There's no reward, even as a film critic or as a film reviewer discussion, or I don't think there's any major YouTube influencers that focus on silent movies. There's no discovery, there's no nuance. It is an era in cinema that seems to just have gone, and people are happy it's not there. So we talk about this movie, right? It's a silent movie. I get it. We have music, but we had music too with silent movies. We had soundtracks. So what do we do with this movie? What do we compare it to? Because we have a story, we have a tale, pun intended, but it's a bunch of animals. They're trying to avoid this flood. They're in somewhat of a fantastic fantasy. There's like relics and giant sculptures of cats, and the flood just keeps washing things away. We end up with a whale. We get a big whale moment. The whale has believe it or not, a end credit sequence, so Mr. Whale does not die. Yes, but it really makes you root for the animals. You feel for the animals. The position for the visual for this movie has been the lush environments. There's a deep sense of like sunlit grass, and it's as far and clear as the eye can see, and it's very striking. But then the animals start moving, and we kind of get fur, we kind of don't. We get some bad models. We get some mocap, faux show. And we get a lot of these elements that maybe pull us out of the movie because, here we go, it's not animated. You kind of want to say Flow is not designed to be an animated feature. See, some of it looks very similar to a movie we discussed about a week ago called The Wild Robot, which is a painterly brushed effect. It's a texture, as they like to call it in animation, all over the animals. It looks pretty good though, but sometimes it looks jarring. It just takes you out. So we get some of that. We get a story because we don't have dialogue. We don't have animals talking. We kind of want to say, do we not have animals speaking because budget-wise and even technology-wise, we couldn't figure out the lips moving. We just couldn't figure it out. We had to do this. And what we did was pretty good because this movie has a ton of adulation. It's been popular around the world. So we have these things, and then we kind of get the social pressure that you have to like this movie. You have to like a silent movie with potentially poorly rendered animal fur that takes you out of it. A lot of these animals, they look like that they are open market models. So there's a little bit of character design and nuance in the cat, in the main character, but all the other creatures, all the other animals featured in this, they look like you could download them from Google Earth or Google Sketch. Sorry, they look like poser models, and it doesn't knock, but it's somewhat of the fantasy of telling a big story with limited resources, which I feel like they geniusly and successfully executed here. But then we have to measure this against what the other big guys are doing, and guess what? I don't feel this quite measures up. I think this is a fun experience. I think even as a kid, you will watch this for a little bit. You will see the cat run around. You'll like the cat, but then eventually you will get bored with it. I think as adults and children would have the same reaction. I'm curious to see how children react to it. But I understand the attention a film like this gets when it's made with limited means because it's held to a high standard, just like that G.I. Joe comic book. So, AKAPADers, we do animation on Saturdays and Sundays. Late drop today. I'm not even going to explain to it, but we had major technical difficulties, so I am sorry. I wanted to bring this to you sooner. So rock and roll until Monday. I guess get ready for President's Day. Maybe we'll do something on President's Day. Let's go.
Okay, that's a wrap.